Welcome to another conversation on the Voice of the Marketeer, wherever you're listening or watching this from. My guest today joins us all the way from the beautiful city of Hamburg and is someone whose B2B marketing career has taken him through several exciting adventures, if I may. Meet Julian, a true trailblazer in the B2B tech marketing space, and today the driving force behind brand and growth at MicroHarvest, where he is at the forefront of revolutionizing what we call the global protein supply through innovative biotech. But with a career in transforming industries from mobility to battery manufacturing, I think his insights have led multiple companies to successful acquisitions, and we'll talk more about it. But Julian is a true global thinker with a passion for tech-driven solutions, and he particularly excels at driving commercial success in very high-velocity environments. Julian, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today.
Of course, it's a pleasure, and thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the kind word and the beautiful introduction.
Well, I have so many questions for you because just looking at the sheer expansiveness of the work you've done in the past. But maybe to really kick this off, obviously your career has spanned very diverse industries, if I may. Yet I think a common or a constant focus, in my opinion, for you seems to have been very impact-driven and impact-focused B2B tech. Tell me where your passion for this kind of came about and how that has excited you over the years in terms of bringing all of these different innovations to market.
It's a great question, and thanks so much for asking it. Actually, it happens pretty organically. So I always try to test something and afterwards do a retro to looking a bit inside, seeing what resonates with me, where I found my sweet spot, where really could help, and so on. Because as you said, I tested so many different industries and stuff, but the red line is definitely B2B tech and helping so much needed innovation to go to market, right? And actually, when I look back, also to high school, I did my major in physics. And I was definitely not the best physics guy in the classroom, but I had so much curiosity about tech, physics, and everything beyond that topic. So this sticks to me since high school. So I was always very curious about tech stuff. And now growing a bit older, with a little bit of more experience, I saw that tech is so much needed in the world because we have so many pressing issues out there. And I believe with us being a human species that's always drives for more and wants to grow and want to experience more, having limited resources on the planet. So I think we can just solve a lot of these problems via tech, and seeing that I could always be the piece of the puzzle docking onto very experienced tech guys and girls and help them just to communicate it and bring it to market over time felt so fulfilling. So that's why I said, okay, this is definitely my purpose. I need to just doubling down on it and bring a lot of deep tech to market. So it started in high school, found my passion. And last point, it is when zooming out a bit on Europe, especially, living in Germany, I see the innovation race, which is good on a global scale, that like China and the US are like spearheading, and the EU like falling a bit behind, while seeing there's so much tech talent, scientific people, so much in academia happening, but sometimes being like really risk averse and lacking the also the skills to bring it to market. I think it's also needed for us in Europe to push on that end, to have like in the end technology that is solving pressing challenges, but also for Europe to keep our prosperity and our stability. So I think it's needed to bring those deep tech stuff to market.
And tell me, is this through your marketing career, obviously, having worked with all of this different impact-focused business, how have you kind of, crafted your go-to-market in general? Because you've obviously covered industries from SaaS and mobility to battery production to sustainable food and whatnot, right? And I think each of them obviously requires a unique approach. And so my question is, how do you go about identifying the core elements that sort of remain consistent or have to be, but then also other elements that need to be adjusted on the go to ensure that there is success in all these different markets?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm also curious about your opinion on that, because I know you're serving also different, like same business verticals, but different clients, different markets, right? From my perspective, it is surprisingly similar, right? As I said, I experience a lot of different industry and work with a lot of inspiring teams, but the core principles tend to be super, super similar. And I always start with aligning everybody, because I don't know if I have the stats still at my head, but roughly 40 to 50% of startups fail due to misalignment, especially at leadership level. So I think all of these deep tech companies first and foremost need a lot of alignment. Alignment on the vision, alignment on the mission, the job to be done, maybe setting up a North Star metrics in order to help them to stay aligned. So I feel that this core principle first and foremost is super important, no matter which industry. Alignment, alignment, alignment is key. And as I said, I experienced a lot and still do that, but I try to just lock down the framework and mechanics that have worked, at least for me, over the course of different industries. And I distilled it into a framework that I now just apply and optimize. And one thing before maybe giving you a little bit top line of how the framework look like, I think two things that came up when you asked this question is, one is I think one core other principle is that you really have to fall in love with the problem rather than the solution. And a lot of tech guys and girls love their innovation, but sometimes missing to change perspective and really see what the market and the persona and the people they serve need, maybe to work on the wrapping paper and so on. So I think this is really core principle that I've seen. And another thing is that it's really key to work very close together with tech and the go-to-market team, right? It needs to be at least, because it tend to fight each other a bit. Like you do the commercials, we do the beautiful product, right? But we can just be successful if it works very, very much together. And if you have very fast feedback loops. So from the front line, so from the market side towards the tech team, adjusting the product and so on, and bringing tech team also to the front line itself to experience what is really working and what's not. What is a painkiller and what is rather a vitamin. So these principles have always been the same with same patterns. And I always try to match, very simply speaking, the right message through the right channel to the identified ICP, ideal customer profile in the end. And you do that through a lot of iterations, right? So you focus on your brand building a beautiful brand that enhances sales and builds trust, which is the core pillar of B2B sales in the end, trust. But you iterate a lot on different messages, different channels, and then you find what resonates with your ICP. And the ICP is not the one that is just biting, but it's also the one that you serve initially the best, right? Because they will stay if the product and your services is also just really compelling. And just giving you a picture here is what I usually use is, it's like going an adventure, as you say, on sea, right? With a cool crew that is obsessed with solving the problem and being open with the solution. And then just fishing. It's just fishing with different equipment and different bites. And you do a lot of fishing on the front lines. And it's rather not about interviews, it's pure sales, trying to build MVPs and messages. And when you see where the fish that you really also have fun with serving and it matches well, then you're doubling down, start scaling, saying this equipment with this message is attracting this kind of big fish that you're aiming for. And then you forget about the rest, because scaling in the end is not doing more, it's doing less. And then you start scaling with doubling down on the channel, on the message that's working, and on the niche you're targeting before then moving on to different markets and so on. And last point is I distilled this framework in a white paper that I will release, I think, in the next 2 weeks, because I really enjoy if other people help deep tech startups to go to market because it's needed. And I'm happy to just pull out everything I learned. Not saying that it's ideal for everybody, but it certainly creates some shortcuts for others. So it's a given framework that you can use. And for me, it worked very well.
Oh, that's amazing. I'd keep an eye out for your white paper to be released, and I'd love to share it with everybody watching or listening to this as well, because I think it could be very useful. But interestingly, recently I read a report from Deal Room, I think it was, which was talking about the European deep tech and where things stand and such. And my conclusion of reading that report is deep tech startups are really at the forefront of tech advancement today because they're creating some very cutting edge solutions that have the potential to shape the future, right? However, without effective marketing strategies, I think these startups have time and again and will continue to struggle to gain the sort of visibility, to secure their funding, to attract the right customer or ICPs, as you called it, right? So I think marketing is going to ultimately be the underlying factor in actually fueling that innovation and driving success for a lot of these startups, because they are still going to struggle otherwise in creating and driving that awareness and educating the market and engaging the right kind of customers and ultimately market penetration, right, which is what counts for their longevity and sustainability. So I really liked what you said, and maybe that's why I don't want to double tap a little bit, because your experience with deep tech startups in general is quite incredible. And tell me this, oftentimes these startups also face very long cycles of sales and biz dev, right? What, in your opinion and experience, have you noticed as the key hurdles or key challenges for such deep tech products to go from a 0 to 1? Of course, from a sales and business development point of view, but also if you can talk to me a little bit from a marketing point of view, as a marketing leader, what have you seen as the biggest challenges in educating the market here?
Great question. And to put it in a nutshell, maybe to give you a claim and also a picture, is for at least from my perspective, right? What is marketing doing essentially? It's building trust, right? It's, for me, marketing is sales enablement. And it builds awareness, and it's all about nurturing when you have like B2B customers or prospects in your funnel. And trust is what early stage brands or startups are lacking, right? Because you have no legacy, and you're just the early challenger, very early in the market, and so on. So the question for me always is, from a marketing standpoint, how can you build trust, and not just by chance, but very systematically? Because I know from fact that this helps a lot when doing lead gen and also nurturing, and helps with closing and also with the fundraising, right? So a couple of things that have worked for me is for sure get your expertise out there. I know like tech teams sometimes don't want to be in the spotlight, which is very generous, right? They don't want to be in the spotlight and stuff, but establishing thought leadership through media and PR, through LinkedIn, so demonstrating that you know your stuff, super important. Right? But still, maybe if you're a serial entrepreneur, you build trust because you've done it before. But imagine you're just out of an institution, like out of an university. Nobody knows you, but you have like this great innovation. So talking about it is key. Maybe hiring people that are familiar with the industry, because you know as well as I do that it's, in the end, it's a people business. So you have to have maybe the right connections, right? So you always start with intros through your network or your investors. But if you also hire some people that also bring in trust on the client sides, that helps. Product excellence for sure. So once you're just pushed through and landed some first prototypes, your product and your service have to be outstanding. It has to be a painkiller, because I always believe if you have a good product, it's the best marketing. Yeah, and in the end, it's incentivizing maybe also these industrial influencers. Sounds like a B2C thing, but I found this a big hack for myself. because every industry has this one or two person that everybody knows. Like in the battery industry, we found this one guy, or he found us because of our thought leadership, and he was the early adopter, and he believed in what we are doing, and he was telling the big corporates that they trust him, that they at least should speak to us, and he was facilitating it, and we incentivized him to align the interest, and this helped a lot to foster trust. And now, leaving you with the picture I wanted to draw is, for me, B2B marketing is like pushing a very, very heavy train. So initially it's too hard and you need to push and it's so slow, but it becomes easier and faster over time, right? And you have to push through because it's worth it. And you have to find ways with marketing to enable trust and credibility and initial awareness.
Wow, I never would have thought of the train reference. So thanks for putting that image in my head. But maybe just double tapping on something you said a little earlier. And I want your opinion on this because you are one of those people who've been there, done that. Now, you've obviously had a lot of success with B2B tech startups that were later at some point acquired, right? And there were some really interesting acquisitions of those startups as well. So from a marketing perspective, what do you think are certain things that really actually move the needle or contribute to making the company attractive for acquisition? And I think this is irrespective of the industry itself, but really looking at the product and its potential and its possibilities. What do you think are some of those elements that have contributed to the attractiveness for acquisition?
So first disclaimer, I think the acquisition shouldn't be always the guiding light. For me, it was always about how can we scale fast and solve the problem at scale. And if an acquisition or partnership is a facilitator, let's go for it. But the battery business, I had the pleasure to build or help build, sticks on their own, becoming, like, I would say, over decades, a family-owned business, beautiful, solving a big problem at scale. Acquisition is not needed in their business. So it depends, I would say. But doubling down, acquisitions, why do they happening? Because corporates most likely are lacking this power of innovation. It's not their DNA, but it's the DNA of a startup. So from a marketing standpoint, you have to get on the radar and showcase that you have traction, right? Ideally also IP, because that's unique. A team that knows their stuff, because acquisitions most likely work well when the team also stays a bit. And so it's not just about the technology, but also the team that sometimes they just want to include. And very frankly and simply speaking, from marketing standpoints, it's showcasing the proof of concept through LOIs, MOUs, partnerships, right? And the right partnerships, because I've seen that we all tend to want to sometimes go the easy route and sell to other startups because we know each other and they answer faster and so on. But forcing you to do partnerships with corporates or also mid-sized company is key from a marketing standpoint to, like, this should be your ICP, even though it takes longer, even though it's the harder train to push, it's still worth it. So it's a lot about traction, having your numbers in place, showcasing the growth model, and so on. So having this story and that you can back it up with real numbers and showcases and contracts, offtake agreements, and so on. And marketing is essential, again, also here, because in the end, acquisition is about a big deal that can be enabled through trust. So it's building a beautiful brand over time that they just want to have, or that initially creates awareness and then creates a desire. And backing up all your claims, all you do through reliable and trustworthy marketing data and a working growth model.
And so maybe just thinking aloud here, Julian, for you, from a marketing perspective, when you were, in the midst of these acquisitions or, these journeys through the startups that you were part of, what has been the biggest learning for you as a marketing leader?
Biggest learning, in terms of go-to-market, or with putting my entrepreneurial hat on there as well?
I think I'm trying to understand more from an individual marketing leadership perspective, how have these journeys and these adventures kind of shaped who you are as a marketing leader today?
Mm. So I think, as touching back on what I said in the beginning, I think it helped me to see clearly about my purpose and where I can serve the best. Because it wasn't clear that it's marketing in the end, right? But it helped me a lot to see that naturally I have a tendency to find it quite easy to inspire others when I'm believing in the stuff we are doing. And then I just saw that through this framework, that is again surprisingly similar all the time with different nuances, that I can just help and bring stuff to market. And I found this astonishing, and then just double down and say, I want to be this marketing and growth leader. I want to continuously learn and improve because it's needed. It's a lot of fun, and I have a natural tendency to do it anyways, because back in the day, I used to teach a lot of surfing, kite surfing, windsurfing, and I just loved the feeling when people returned after a year and said, Julian, you inspired us to do this beautiful sports, and I now have like beautiful moments, beautiful experiences. And I felt, wow, I could like just with a tiny fraction of doing a little bit, I could help improve a bit of other lives, if that improved it. And doubling down here on marketing, I saw that it's a lot about just understanding people. It's a lot about empathy, and it's a lot about creating experiences. And the question is then always through what touch point, through and using what message, simple message, you can create the best experience that enables trust in the end.
Wow, that's very well said, actually. I also believe that as marketing leaders, we are only half as good as the team that we build around us. And I don't know if you have a specific opinion on that, but I do want to pick your brain a bit about the kind of teams you have built, both in the past as well as today at MicroHarvest. How do you go about putting an A team together that kind of helps you put all your ideas into actual execution and action?
So also pretty similar all the time. So I jumped in, and I believe that it's necessary to be the adventurer early on, as I said, to try these things on the front line yourself, to really experience and have direct contact with the potential customers, to feel what is working and what's not. And then also pretty usual, I built a team with some helping working students, because I love them to grow and to become this marketing manager, also growth leader over time. So I usually start on my own, getting a sense for everything, and then working with external experts, freelancers. So usually using the same or similar PR agency, because you cannot do all on your own. You need to have like a great team. So PR is something I need always help with. Then on brand building, I work with a creative art director, external, and I have my network for that, because trusted persons, and we can just execute super fast. And then, yeah, building marketing managers in the team. And then over time, stepping out, because first it's about building the growth setup and system, like a clockwork, and then enabling others to do that and stepping out. And for me, a team always consists of three personas. You have the adventurer, you have the expert, and you have the investor. And the investor is basically the one that hires you, enables you with budget and clear mission. The adventurer, it's me in the beginning, just seeing what works, pretty entrepreneurial stuff, and then building the system. And then you hire experts for the channels and for the content that needs to be done, right? After you saw what's working. Because I saw a lot of times you're just hiring experts, and sometimes the channel is not working, so it doesn't make sense. So you have to have general people with general curiosity, and then you hire experts, and then putting other adventures on top, while zooming out and become the investor of your own team. How is it for you? Because I know you, I mean, you're docking onto also B2B health tech startups, and you bring in the team. So how do you feel? Would you resonate with that, or is it different for you?
I think it's very similar for me. I have been in the B2B tech space for a decade now, and I've worked with startups and scale-ups of various sizes, and but mostly in this software as a service space. But I would agree with you. I also think the team construct and size often depends on the stage that the startup is at and the amount of funding it has at any point in time. Because but I also believe that you can get so much accomplished with small, lean marketing teams if you've hired the right kind of generalists. Because in the beginning, especially when the startup is young and it's still in that sort of growth phase, I really believe in a jack of many trades kind of professionals who can bring in a multi-varied potential of skills and competencies. And they might not be the experts at it, but they would still be able to work their magic if with spending a little or not too much time. So I really believe in those kind of people. I also believe that the marketing world is tending to more of generalists than specialists, because generalists also, as T-shaped marketeers, as we've learned, can really bring a variety of skills to the table when budgets are tight, companies are strapped for cash, and also time is limited, because these are naturally better project managers in getting their act together. But I like the way you explained it. I liked the three categories that you called it, because if you think about it, honestly, those are the roles that we end up assuming eventually, right? So, but I like the terminologies that you used, and I might actually steal it for something else.
Yeah, please go ahead. Very interesting, because you're right. Yeah, and that's so true. It depends on the stage for sure, but it's beautiful always to see then the team growing, and just focus on stuff that's working. And I think what I'm always looking at is, no matter the skills, is there a culture fit, and is there an obsession for the mission? Because then you can learn and do everything, right? Basically, skills is one thing, but you can train and teach people, inspire people with a lot. But is there really an obsession for the mission we're serving?
Absolutely. And if I'm being honest, one of the skills that I really look for is an appetite and a curiosity for learning. Because for me, that has always been like a deal breaker in finding the right fit, both for the team, but also for the business. Because I think people who naturally come with that openness and that willingness to like learn from everything around them, from peers, from junior team members, but also from the larger network and the community in marketing. I think those are the ones that really move the needle in thinking, in strategizing, in coming up with exciting campaign ideas, in looking at data differently, in also looking at the whole advertising and the social media space differently. So for me, that has been an interesting skill to look out for.
Great. Yeah, that's true.
But maybe just to wrap this up, Julian, I do want to talk to you a little bit about what I call sustainable tech, because that has been your baby for a while now with MicroHarvest, and all the exciting work you're doing. Tell me, what are some trends and like some innovations in the larger space that you believe would be super exciting for B2B companies to start paying attention to when it comes to sustainable tech, and maybe touch a little bit about marketing on that front?
I think taking a step back here again, it's first and foremost, it always starts with this openness and curiosity, as you beautifully explained, and not just for individuals, but for whole organizations. Because again, also when creating partnerships, I experience a lot of corporates and other companies, especially in Europe, that tends to be risk averse. Let's name it. And it's a shame. You should, at least from my perspective, be curious and have this engaging conversations and then judge afterwards on it. So I think first, when it comes to trends, being like, as you said, beautiful said, be super, super curious and embrace yourself with new stuff. Now, I cannot call out like big trends for all industries, but maybe the trends I've seen on this industry I served with last is, so, I mean, I also built my own software startup where it's all about culture work. So I saw that this is an emerging trend, sometimes a more vitamin than a painkiller. However, I see that we have a war for talent, as we all know. It's not the best term, but it's super hard to find matching people to grow your stuff, and really making sure to attract the right candidates and on an eye to eye level, and looking at the culture fit, I think is a trend that is happening and which is pretty good. In other industries, I mean, in energy is pretty clear, the decentralized supply of energy, so needed, and switching towards renewal, depending on now what happens in the US. But I think that's a big and necessary trend. And then you have a lot of deep tech startups enabling it, and creating these beautiful stories growing so fast. In mobility, it was all about autonomous driving. I think this will have this will be an amazing future. And I was so curious about what will happen, and I will stay curious on the sideline now as well. And now in food, I mean, the biggest trend that is needed is to create nutritious food for the world's population, right? Because we will have a big protein gap in the next upcoming years. By 2050, roughly 50% protein that we are lacking. So there will be a big gap in terms of protein. And what it means is that a lot of parts of the population will suffer from having not enough nutritious food. And I see a trend because, again, trends needs to follow necessities, right? And I see a trend, which is good, that we are working on tech solutions, enabling nutritious and tasty and good and price affordable food. And these trends I see. And lastly, touching on marketing, I think what I always like to see is, obviously it comes down back to the first principles. So it's about people. So with all this AI is like helping me a lot. I became so much more productive, and I'm building stuff, but we should not forget that it's a people business, and we should never compromise this face-to-face meetings, building relationships, building trust, and have just tech to support our efforts and creating content and doing also strategy sparring and so on, because that enabled me at least to become super productive. But never forget that it's about people, and we all need to enable these beautiful, big, deep tech startups to just go to market to solve pressing problems.